MovieWeb.com.
So the first thing I want to ask you about this movie is we have this technology that allows you to go pretty much anywhere, yet the migrant workers are still being exploited. And I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about that? Because it almost seems like that's what would actually happen if this was the future.
Sure. Well, the main idea, the idea that got me started on this whole journey to make this film, Sleep Dealer, was realizing that two things were happening in our planet. One is that technology was connecting us and making the world kind of feel smaller and more connected. Another thing that was happening is borders were getting shut. Walls were getting built, like between the United States and Mexico. And so there's two things happening. The world is becoming more connected by technology, but it's also becoming more divided by borders. And so that idea of where are we going, and what does that future look like, and what might America look like seen from the other side of one of those walls? Well, that was the original motivation, for making this film.
It almost seems like Memo strives to limit himself in a world that would almost be limitless.
Mm-hmm.
So can you kind of talk about that mindset and what went into creating that character along with your writer?
Sure. Well, the character in a lot of ways is based on my dad. My dad left Latin America and from Peru, actually, and came to the United States to work. To do that, he had to cross a lot of borders. He had to go through a lot of struggles. What for? To get a job. In this film, my main character, what he wants to do is go in the city and work. But in this future, there's a border wall. So he can't come to America. So instead, he finds this kind of new world order where he ends up in a factory. He connects his body to a network, and even from Mexico controls a machine that does his labor in America, so that his pure energy goes to America, but his body stays out. And it was based on the journey that my dad went on and the feeling of being in America as an undocumented immigrant, where you're here, but legally you're not supposed to be here. You're here, but you can't vote. The sense of being present, but also being invisible. So all of these realities for today's immigrants are interpreted in this kind of creative science fiction way in Sleep Dealer.
And are those movies available, like here in the States?
Well, I've been making films for about 15 years, and a lot of my short films deal with some of these same ideas, and many of them are on the internet and kind of circulating around in college campuses, and they can be found, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was interested in that just to look at your previous work, since
Right
this
on,
movie's
bro.
so cool. But one of the things, this movie is really ambitious, yet you're working with limited resources, and I've almost got to say that really helps you, because this looks so realistic as opposed to like one of these like iRobot where like everything is CGI'd and crazy.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that actually helped
Sure.
the look of the film?
Like I said, two things, man. One is I think a lot of science fiction movies sell us a false bill of goods. They tell us that in the future, the cars are going to be different, the buildings are going to be different, your couch is going to be different, there's going to be robots, that everything is going to be different. And that's not real. That's not how the future happens. The truth is, we have iPhones, but we live in buildings that might be 100 years old. The future is a collage. And that's what Sleep Dealer looks like, where much of it looks like today's reality, or even looks older, and then some pieces of it look highly advanced and kind of futuristic. And so that to me was a kind of political and a creative idea, is that the future is a collage. And then it also helped us save money on the budget, because we didn't have to rebuild new cars or rebuild new fancy buildings. And so we end up with this kind of busted up, backwards and forwards vision of the future that also let us make the film on budget.